This is WCRN Weekend with your host, Pat Rice.
Welcome to another episode of WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830. On today's show, we actually invited one of WCRN's other hosts to come on to our show to talk about how to build a successful business along with their upcoming book about their lives, business, and so much more. Let me introduce Douglas Rawan, the CEO of Drew Mortgage, which is located out in Shrewsbury, Mass. They also have locations out in Boston and down in Florida. Douglas is a man full of passion, inspiration, and energy. So let's get to it. Welcome to the show, Douglas. Thank you for coming down this afternoon.
Pat, thank you.
How are you today?
Very good. Thank you for asking.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with mortgages?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. Actually, I started off as a real estate developer, and I started off at 17. I opened my first clothing store, men's clothing store. I was a buyer at the store called Milton's, and I think I was 16 at that time. And then I got a job in Worcester, a place called Eddie's at Park Ave. Used to be a fine department store. Like a lot of other stores, they've gone out of business. And so at that time, I was a buyer and going to New York, starting off at 17. You learn a lot, and you learn a lot from people that are very knowledgeable in the garment industry. Not only do you learn a lot, but you learn how to sort of be tenacious, and I use that word on my radio show. And the reason I use that word is because we try to help people. My show's more about inspiring people to get to the next level in life, to try to go through those walls that are stopping you to get to the next level of life. And the main thing, Pat, why people really don't achieve their goals is because they have fear. Fear stops them every time. We've done many surveys on this. If you look at the Pew Research Center or the Wall Street Journal, we do. My wife Kristen writes my show, and we do many articles on how much productivity time people lose when they go to work. It's 15 hours a month. So we have a program. It's called the corporate program. Not to get off track, but we go to people's offices, and can do it online with us. And it's not about giving them a first mortgage or a second mortgage. It's about how do they build wealth. I have a gentleman example, $37.50. He's paying for a cup of coffee. Why? The coffee's $2.50, but he's overdrafting his account every time he buys the coffee. So he had $300 worth of overdraft charges from his bank for that month alone. Not smart. So what we do is try to teach people, stop doing this, stop doing this, stop doing this. This is what you should be doing. And it's not your typical financial show. It's an inspirational show. It's a call-in show as well, but it's about helping people, again, achieve their goals. And I'll just leave it at that.
How did all this inspiration originate? You're a very inspirational kind of person, and not too many people, they might not be raised that way. Or
right.
Where does it come from?
I think a lot has to do with my mom at 3 years old. I think she brainwashed me to be self-employed because her family was in the beauty supply business. So they came from Lebanon, and they started a little business on Front Street in Worcester at the time, years and years ago, what my grandfather did. And then they were in the beauty supply business, and I worked in that business a little while, just delivering packages and everything. But most of my achievement when I was 7 years old, I always wanted to do well and make money. I was an entrepreneur. At 7, I had 10, my grandfather helped me make 11 shoe boxes, just to tell you how do you get started in life. 7 years old, 11 shoe boxes, 10 kids worked for me, and I did the same. I did shoe box. We put 5 cents, but we used to get dollar tips, and I put them outside the bars. So when the guys came out, they give them $5 to shine their shoes and a dollar tip maybe, just to make enough money for pinball machines.
So now, are your parents and your grandparents, they're not originally from the United States?
My parents are from the United States. My grandfather was not from the United States. My father's father was from Syria, actually. But I just want to just say one thing. Everything starts from when you're really young. So if you had, but in the 50s and the 60s, a lot of parents didn't know about 401ks, Pat. They didn't know about IRAs. They didn't know about mutual funds. So they might have worked in a factory. They weren't financially savvy. But today, it's no better because 95. So you might have thought at that time, okay, fine, if these people work in factories versus someone that's a business or a president of a bank, maybe they're going to teach their kids a little bit different, and maybe because, I'll give you an example. I have a son, and he basically basically is learning every day from what I teach him. I bring him showing how to flip a house. I show him real estate because I've been a real estate developer all my life. But point being is I think you have to teach kids at a very young age to learn how to be either self-employed or whomever they're out there building wealth for, make sure it's your family, not someone else. And that's the problem today. Everybody goes to work. They haven't got a raise in the last 10 years, a lot of people. Some people haven't gotten a raise in 20 years. Talked to a gentleman the other day, 20 years he worked for a company, hasn't gotten a raise. So you have to, I always say people need that third income, and that third income could be, and we just use real estate as a vehicle because it's a vehicle where you can make a lot of money. Donald Trump's not in the real estate business because it's not a lucrative vehicle. So the vehicle, the type of business, and that's what I mean by vehicle, is the most important, that you don't get into a nickel and dime business. Whereas, example, if you're going to sell a $5 million life insurance policy, are you going to sell it at the local bar room, or are you going to sell it at the country club? I would think you're going to sell it at the country club. You'd have a better chance of selling at the country club. Why? Because the clientele might be, better. They might have money, so to speak. They might be, whatever the situation may be. Not putting down anyone that goes to the local bar, but the point is that that's how you breed success. You network with smart people, and inevitably you'll learn from them, and then you'll grow. Period. That's how people should do it. They're too lax. I find people too lackadaisical. They just assume everything's going to work out, and it doesn't.
Exactly. They just assume things are going to fall right into their laps. And that's why I asked about your parents, if they're originally from the U.S., and you mentioned your grandparents
Smart question.
weren't, is because a lot of people that aren't originally from the U.S., foreigners, they come here and they take advantage of every opportunity they get. But then you have kids who are born and raised in America, and they sit on their couch playing video games, and they just expect, I'll just float my way through school, and then I'll end up getting a $500,000 a year job, and everything's going to be all right just because I was born and raised in America. And that's not necessarily true. When you got, I don't want to exclude anyone, but you got the little Asian guy who comes to America, he creates his own Chinese restaurant from the bottom up, and
God
now
bless him.
He's racking in a ton of money, you know?
There's no law that says, I said every day, there's no law that says you shouldn't make as much money as you possibly can. I say this almost daily. This is a game. I'm not talking about the game of life. This is a game we play on a daily basis. Whoever plays it well wins. Whoever doesn't play it so well loses. I want my listeners to be on the winning side. And I truly do. And we've helped many, many people become multimillionaires based on the fact that they got into a vehicle, meaning the real estate business. And I don't care if they're broke. I bought a $3.2 million property, no money down, pulled $300,000 out the day I bought it, and now it's a valuable shopping center on Route 9 in Shrewsbury, Mass, across from the old Spags, now currently across from Whole Foods. They just developed the property. We're adding 30,000 square feet to our shopping center on Route 9. And again, they just made a fast $35 million at White City because they bought a property for $50 million, put 12 into it, and sold it for $95 million 3 years later. So how do you make that kind of money if the vehicle, meaning the type of business, is not the type of business where you can make a lot of money? So it has to be a business that's lucrative. And again, God doesn't send me these messages through the airways saying, tell your radio listeners to get in the real estate business because it's lucrative. I know it's lucrative because I've been doing it for many, many years. We used to own 97 multifamilies at the same time. I think I was 27 at that time. So I tell people, start young, Pat. Start your age. This is a great opportunity.
Definitely, I agree. With anything you want to do in life, you need to start young. You don't want to get in the game too late. We have to take a quick break, but in our next segment, we will continue our discussion with Douglas about how you can build a successful business, the steps that you need to take, and if you should buy or rent. You've been listening to WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830.
Welcome to WCRN Weekend and your host, Pat Rice.
And we are back with Douglas Rawan. In our last segment, we introduced Douglas and his company, Drew Mortgage. We talked about some of his inspiration and how he got involved with being an entrepreneur and when you should get involved with starting your own business. In this segment, we're going to continue our discussion with Douglas on the steps of starting your own business, the future of real estate in Massachusetts, and if millennials should rent or buy. How should someone execute a plan in starting up their own business, and what are the most important necessities before one does? Like, how much money should someone have in the bank before doing so, And can you actually turn nothing into something?
Yes, you're listening to someone that was in $8.5 million worth of debt, made it, almost lost everything, and my lawyer sent me to go file bankruptcy. I refused because there was no way that I was going to take advantage of the little guy who went down, the plumber, and put $10,000 on his plumbing supply. I'm not going to do that. I don't know how to stiff people. It's not who I am. So I paid all the debt off in 5 years, and my lawyer said, there's no way you'll do this. You're dreaming. You can do anything you want to do, but positive thinking is not always the answer, because positive thinking, I've done articles on my show that basically say, Pat, that it fogs the total picture, so to speak. In other words, it doesn't give you reality. Whereas, when you look at something to say, look, this is a serious problem. How do I deal with it? I never worry about yesterday. I only worry about tomorrow. So to answer your question, whereas, people have to be tenacious. They really do. They have to be fearless. They have to be tenacious, and they have to have a mentor. If you have a mentor, it shows in the real estate business especially that 50% of people that have mentors, no matter really if it's real estate or whatever business it is, if you have a mentor, you'll be much more successful than someone that does not. And I'm not talking about paying, $30,000 for someone in California or Texas to show you how to flip a house in Massachusetts, because they have no clue. They don't know what the house is going to cost to rehab. But when you can make in 4 months, $150,000 if you get the right property, or you can make $50,000 a year because you're getting it cash flow off for a 4-family, let's say. A gentleman was ready to file bankruptcy. Make a real long story short, he made money because he bought the property and he made $110,000. The property he bought for $2,000, it's worth $310,000. I can lend them 70% of that $310,000, which is $77,000. We're paying off $25,000 in credit card debt, which cost them $15,000 a month, $1,500 a month, $90,000 over 5 years. What we make gross is not what we keep, so you capitalize that number based on someone's tax bracket. A lot of people don't know that, so he'd actually probably have to make $125,000 to keep the $90,000 in his tax bracket. He makes $35,000 a year. He put down 3.5% because he's going through a separation. He was able to get a money from his dad, a gift, and we had the seller pay the closing costs. My point is that we pay off debt, Pat, through buying real estate, through the ownership of real estate. So it's a program. We're developing a program on Amazon where people will be able to go in, and we're really just trying to cover the production because the production costs are pretty expensive, as well. TV production is very expensive, like radio.
What's the future of real estate in Massachusetts? Down.
I really think you're going to see the market down. Finally, in the last month, people have been starting to talk about a recession. You haven't heard that. You're the producer of my show. I've been saying this for many, many months, like starting 6 months ago, I said, we're going into a recession this fall. And there's signs that we are. Maybe I'm a little bit ahead of myself, but I think you're going to see a 15 to 20% decline in real estate. And the only place to buy properties today to get your best opportunity to win is at an auction. Because once that property hits the market, Pat, there'll be 10 investors. If it's an investment property where it needs construction, not an owner-occupied property. And again, that just depends on who wants to do whatever work and can you make money on that property as an investor. But the point being is that you can make a lot of money within a very short period of time, but you have to be focused and you have to know really what you're doing. We want to make people a cash buyer, and what that means is if I'm out making an offer on a property, I offer cash and I offer no contingency. Now, it takes you a while to get to that point, but there are many investors out there where I don't care if you have not great credit. If you understand the construction business and you understand real estate, there's many, many people that would want your services, and they're willing to pay for them as long as you know what you're doing. The problem is a lot of people in construction, I've been in business 20 years. Well, that doesn't mean you know what you're doing. Trust me, from someone that understands construction.
Now, for younger people getting out of school and they're just starting in their careers and everything,
right?
What do you recommend them, to buy a property or rent?
A guy called me the other day and he said, I was listening to a guy who teaches about real estate. And a lot of these guys are actors, number one. In other words, they're just reading a script. They never flipped a house in their life. And most people have to understand that 50% of these shows, that's who you're listening to, an actor. If you can buy. If you're a veteran, you can get in, no money down. If you're a millennial, it's your only time to buy a 1 to 4 family, which I recommend 3 to 4 is your first property. Stay there for a year and then keep it, and it'll pay for your kids' college education, guaranteed. Because these properties are throwing off $50,000, $40,000, $50,000 positive cash flow per month, and we put in a 5% retainer, Pat, for maintenance, in case something goes wrong with the house, which something will always go down. What people have to stop listening to is the naysayers. So it's definitely better to buy than rent. You could have the seller pay the closing costs, but you want to give someone like myself a call at Drew Mortgage, and you're welcome to. My name is Douglas Rowan. You can reach me at Drew Mortgage in Shrewsbury, Mass, or send us an email at drewmortgage.com. Attention, Douglas, please put your phone number down so I can get back to people. But I make them a cash buyer by giving them a firm commitment letter, and that's why my clients are successful, and people will accept their offers before someone has a pre-approval letter, which real estate brokers hate. They hate real estate. They hate pre-approval letters. Here's why, real quick. The reason they hate them is because they give someone a pre-approval letter, right? 2 weeks before the closing, the person's denied. But the same person that just to get the pre-approval letter. Why? Because after they've really done their due diligence, they find out that the person doesn't qualify or whatever the issue is. But you don't do that. There's 4 other closings that account, someone else bought a house, someone else sold the house. So you may have 3 or 4 people moving the same day, closing the same day, and it's a real inconvenience. And people are not happy when that happens. We don't do that at Drew. We just give people firm commitment letters. You're going to spend $60 for the credit report. That's all it costs. The reason banks don't like firm commitment letters is because it's a 5 to 6 hour process to approve a mortgage today. Mortgages are like going to the hospital and asking a doctor to do surgery without the blood test. They're not going to do that. And the blood test in our business is the credit report.
We've been speaking with Douglas Rowan, the CEO of Drew Mortgage, located out in Shrewsbury, Mass. We have to take a quick break, but in our next segment, we are going to discuss about the profit that you should make off of flipping a house, and also get into the details about Douglas's upcoming book release and some of the struggles he has overcame in the industry. You've been listening to WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830.
You're listening to WCRN Weekend. Once again, here's your host, Pat Rice.
And we return. We've been talking with Douglas Rowan, the CEO of Drew Mortgage. And in this segment, we're going to discuss about how much money you should earn when you flip a house, and also about Douglas's upcoming book, and so much more. So when it comes to someone that wants to flip a house or some kind of real estate, how much should the seller of that property earn over the original price of the property?
We want to get, this is really important, if you can get your deposit back through the cash flow. Example, if you're collecting $50,000 a month, right, and if you're collecting $50,000 a year and your deposit was $40,000, if you can get that back within 13, 14 months, in this case you will, because the property's throwing off, pretty significant cash flow, maybe 15, 16 months, that is a great deal. Usually it's a 3-year return or more. If you can do it in less than a year and a half, that's unbelievable return, because you're getting your money back. And not only that, here's the most important thing I want to say on this show. We use property number 1 to buy property number 2, property number 2 to buy property number 3. In real estate, you make your money on the buy. In other words, like I told you the story where you bought it for 2 and it came out appraised at 310, that 110 goes on your financial statement. So your assets, meaning you, Pat, are now worth $110,000 more than you were before you closed on the property, because that goes on your balance sheet as assets. So you're able to borrow against that asset. See, people have to understand how money works. The secret to money is to pay the least amount of interest over the life of the loan. And what we try to do at Drew is to cut years off of a mortgage. Would you rather save $150 a month, or would you rather save $150,000 over a 10-year period, 9.5-year period? So we go from a 30-year mortgage down to a 20 and try to keep the payment within $50 of their 30-year payment. In other words, keep the payment as close as you can, but lower 9.5 years off the mortgage. That's how you save big, big money. And again, that 150, you probably had to make 210, 2.25 to keep the 150. So in other words, you're making, the amount of money that you're saving by knocking 9.5 years. So let's say it's 150. You had to make probably 2.25 gross if you're in a 30% tax bracket to keep the 150. So it's significant amount of money. And then we try to do it again. We do 10 to 30-year mortgages. So if we can do an 11 or odd years, that's what we try to do. Never regress yourself in a mortgage. Don't let a bank take you, when you pay 10 years of a mortgage, don't let them regress you back to a 30. That's regressing you. It's like, sort of like a reverse mortgage. It just doesn't work.
So if you purchase a home and then you add an in-ground or up-ground pool to it. You redo the porch. You have a screened-in porch.
Right.
You add a hot tub, all these other necessities.
Right.
All those.
They're a necessity for you and they're a want for you, but you will only get back, if you're lucky, 35 to 50% of every dollar you put in. So look at it this way. I'm going to put $1 up, but I'm only going to get a value of $35, 30%, 35% if I'm lucky. In other words, if you put $100,000 into the property and I go out and appraise that property, and last week it was worth $2 and you put $100,000 into it, do you expect it to come in at $3? No, it's going to come in at maybe $3.25. $330, even when you put the 100, because you're only going to get $30,000 worth of value.
Why do many startups fail within the first few years?
Because they don't do their due diligence, and they don't do their due diligence to how to be successful. And one of the things, what the program teaches that we're doing on Amazon, my wife Kristen and myself, is we're teaching people how to take a business from start to finish. When you're in $8.5 million with that unsecured debt like I was, you have a bank pressuring you to put that debt to make it secured on your property on Route 9. That is so they could just foreclose on me if they decide to. Because when you go through financial difficulty and you're paying $75,000 in mortgage commitments per month and you're only collecting 35, you can see when you're losing 40 grand a month, okay, and that's just the mortgage payment. What about taxes, insurance, water bills, all that other stuff that comes? You have to pay attention. Stop listening to the naysayers that bought a condominium 25 years ago and might have lost money. That has nothing to do with today. If you're mentored the proper way, you're not going to make mistakes by letting a professional stiff put you out of business, and they will if you allow it. That's why a mentor is very important, to make sure you're not making mistakes. First flip, I lost 35 grand. Second flip, I swore I'd never lose another dime. Lost 45,000. People are saying to me, "What?" My own parents said, "Douglas, enough with the real estate." I said, "Don't enough." Thank God I didn't listen to it. I wish I had $10 for everybody that told me get out of real estate business. Give the building back to the bank at that particular time, because the building was a white elephant. The building's one of the most valuable properties on Route 9. So it just goes to show you that you have to have a 5-year foresight. I do business plans 5-year out. Period.
How can a person stay motivated and focused? What are some techniques that you use?
Listen to my show every day, and you'll be motivated, because we have a lot of energy on my show. Just joking.
I agree.
My point is that Warren Buffett reads a lot. He reads a lot. He said he spends most of his day. He said he spends 80% of his day at work reading. 20% he reads the Wall Street Journal, reads all the business, Fortune magazine. Whatever he reads, and that's how he educates himself. Warren Buffett's obviously one of the richest guys in the world. When you hang around with successful people, it just flows off to you. When you hang around with people that are aggressive and tenacious and don't know how to give up and aren't going to let those walls stop them from getting to the next level in life, Pat, and stop listening to the naysayers. Half of these people have never been successful. They never owned a piece of property. And I say that with the most respect to these people. I'm not judging them. God bless them. I wish them the best.
You mentioned on your radio show several times that you're in the process of writing a book. Could you tell us a little bit about your book? And do you have a title and a release date in mind?
Yeah, we have a release date we're actually just finishing. We're just actually interviewing ghostwriters and people that can actually take the book to publishing. And that's what we're doing. So I'd say we're probably at least 5 months away, realistically. The book is taking longer. It's not easy to write a book. When you're trying to run a company and you do a radio show and you do this other TV stuff that we do, it's really important that, we focus. My problem is I tell people stay narrow and deep. In other words, focus on, a guy tells you he owns 5 businesses, he's losing money in 4, and he's making money if he's lucky in 1. Stay focused and narrow and deep. In other words, we just do mortgages. We do loans. We don't do car loans. We don't do stuff like that. But we do equity lines, fixed rate equity lines, or second mortgages, and we do mortgages, business loans, commercial loans. So we stick to real estate. You follow me? Mm-hmm. That's being narrow and deep. Whereas if you're a real estate developer like I am, I'm doing everything. I'm doing 20 things on my plate a day, and that's when that's fine as long as you have people that are organized that are going to take that to the next level.
Exactly. So what do you talk about within your book?
I talk about how I got started at 7 years old. I talked about, unfortunately, how I helped indict one of my closest friends that was a banker, and he was committing fraud. He was stealing money off of my line of credit and other people's lines of credit. That's one story in the book. I've had 3 hits put on my life, unfortunately, based on a radio show. Things were supposed to be white collar, and so the way after that case was done with this particular person, they were in Shrewsbury. It was public information. The last name was Zacco, Thomas Zacco. So, again, it's public information. Him and his father, we were stockholders in this bank called Wainwright Bank. He was vice president, Tom Zacco Jr. The father, Tom Zacco Sr., he was president of the bank. And again, the feds came in. I think someone must have called the feds in from the bank. I think it was a VP, this assistant manager. She actually called the bank and said, the FBI, I think it was, or the banking commissioner, said, look, we think this guy's committing whatever. They checked it out. We ended up in front of the grand jury. I ended up another person at Drew. And what they were thinking, that we had done fraudulent FHA loans. It's okay for a parent to give a gift and it has to be a blood relative. So that 3.5% gift I was talking about, you can get that from a parent. But I, as a real estate developer, and they were the real estate developers, they're not supposed to lend. They're not supposed to give the money to the parent for the parent to give to the child. They can't do that. That's illegal. But they can get a loan from Wainwright Bank as far as a line of credit, an equity line, to then write the check. That is legal. And out of 13 deals that were done, there was 8 that basically, thank God, the Wainwright Bank gave them loans. The parents wrote the check, so the FBI obviously believed what we were saying because we told them the truth. But I was in front of a grand jury, and this guy went away to jail for over a year. And then we had a little problem with people from Rhode Island coming to pay us a visit, and I think most people know what I mean by that. And I'll just leave it at that. So
I just want to thank you for stopping by to come on to my show today, Douglas Rawan. You can catch the Drew Mortgage Show Monday through Friday, every single day at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And Douglas, how can people get in contact with you?
They can reach me best at my office, Pat. I wanted to stop. And first of all, you're a young guy, and I always say on my show that I thank you because you took over a position from Cam, who was a really first-class producer, and you're right in that league as far as being a first-class producer. I think you're going to be really successful in life, and I truly wish you the best, and I thank you for being on the show. People can reach me in Shrewsbury, Mass. at drewmortgage.com. Attention, Douglas, please give me a telephone number so I can give you prompt service. And at the same token, you can reach me at, again, drewmortgage.com. Send an email or 508-753-1656. Linda's a receptionist. Just tell her you heard me on the show, on the radio show. She'll put you right through.
Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Pat. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I appreciate those words that you just said a couple of seconds ago.
My pleasure.
And where can people be able to get the educational videos that you'll be releasing?
They're going to be able to do them, download them. I'd say we're trying to produce this by June 1st. I will be announcing it on my radio show, again, 8:30 a.m., WCRN, noon to 1, Monday through Friday. Also, you can go on drewmortgage.com. It'll be on there as well. So we're going to let you know when the book's coming out, and we'll let you know when the videos come out. Pat, thanks so much for having me on the show, and I'd love to come on anytime you'd like. My pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Have a great day, Douglas.
God bless you. Have a great day as well.
This has been WCRN Weekend and your host, Pat Rice.